After her father's suicide, Lulu makes her way to his funeral with the help of a fellow army castaway. No longer useful to their country, the unlikely pair embark on a journey to learn that there's more to life than the battlefield. The movie begins in a small Montana town, where an Army Ranger vet named Jackson Briggs is working at a local deli after sustaining a brain injury from a recent tour. After getting an order wrong, he follows up on his request to return to duty in Pakistan. Unable to charm his way into rotation, he's told that he'll need a recommendation from his captain by next Wednesday in order to rejoin his comrades. Later at home, his day goes from bad to worse when his commanding officer returns his call and informs him that a member of his squadron, Riley Rodriguez, committed suicide. A downcasted Jackson drives out the next evening to meet with his fellow Rangers at a bar to celebrate Riley's life. When Jackson catches up with Captain Jones outside, he tries to convince his superior that he's ready for action. Knowing that Jackson paid for the medical waiver, he dismisses his ranger and tells him to get home safe. Passed out in the bar parking lot, Jones returns the next morning and instructs Jackson to meet him at the battalion. Arriving at Fort Lewis, the guard refuses his entry when he provides an expired pass. Jones pulls up and the disgruntled guard has no choice but to grant entry to Jackson. Hoping that the captain will finally give him the approval to rejoin the squad, he's instead charged with the mission to escort Riley's hero dog Lulu to the family funeral in Nogales, Arizona. Coined as the guest of honor by Riley's mother, Lulu is known for her aggressive and unstable behavior, and will be put down after the funeral. Jackson agrees to the mission after Jones tells him if he sticks his neck out for the battalion, he will do the same for him. A muzzled and untrusting Lulu watches as Jackson is given instructions for her care. The two travel mates lock eyes and Jackson is reminded to keep her away from people as she's mastered every command Trigger taught. Attempting to leash her, the pair start off on the wrong foot when Lulu mauls him down after he touches her ear. The Rangers share a laugh at his expense and reveal that she hates having her ears touched. When he finally gets her in the crate, Jackson receives last-minute instructions from Jones and the pair hit the road. In good spirits, Jackson jokingly calls the switchboard and requests business-class seats to Pakistan. Interrupting his call, Jackson tells her it's not his choice to keep her muzzled, and asks her to turn down her crazy by a notch. When Lulu doesn't relent, Jackson makes a stop at a shooting range, and carefully removes her muzzle to give her a break. Keeping her caged, he takes a break of his own and bidding farewell to Crazy Town, he heads inside to shoot targets. Hitting his marks, Jackson experiences an intense dizzy spell but manages to fend it off with pills. Back outside, Lulu manages to break out of her cage and when Jackson returns, he discovers her tearing apart his seats. When she refuses to stop, he tells her they're right to call her a demon and feeds her a pepperoni stick he stuffed with pills. Telling her night-night bitch, he hits the road and is overly pleased with himself as Lulu feels the effects of the pills. Arriving in Portland, Jackson agrees with Lulu that a drink is exactly what he needs, and makes a stop at a local bar. After multiple rounds, the women are turned off by his shallow and cheeky demeanor, and returning outside, Jackson jokes that Lulu is the only female that has a brain in the godforsaken state. Still untrusting of each other, he manages to get her to drink water before he's approached by a pair of beautiful women with dogs of their own. Lulu watches on as Jackson keeps them from approaching her, and charms his way back to their apartment. Revealing that they're tantrikas, Jackson plays along with the ritual, and thoroughly enjoys himself as the women rub him in all the right ways. Elsewhere outside, Lulu's barking attracts the attention of a neighbor who believes that her owner is guilty of dog abuse. On guard, Lulu's incessant barking interrupts the action inside, and a shirtless Jackson heads outside to check on the commotion. The neighbor calls Jackson a dog-abusing redneck and breaks the window before Jackson can stop him. Lulu immediately lunges at the man, and when Jackson finally manages to wrestle her off, she takes a bite out of his arm. Having scared off the women and thereby any action for the night, the pair wake up the next morning in a wooded forest. The duo head back on the road and with no one else to talk to, Jackson turns to Lulu and reminisces about her previous sweet demeanor, and their shared glory on the battlefield. Concluding that they're both viewed as liabilities to the military, he refuses to be put down and would rather have a warrior's death. The conversation agitates Lulu, who manages to break free from her collar and jumps out into the woods. Unable to catch her, he follows her to a cannabis greenhouse where he is suddenly shot in the back with a tranquilizer. Waking up in a shed, Jackson is accused of trying to steal his rare cannabis strains, and the man knocks him down. Left alone, Jackson manages to free himself and follows the owner into the house where he overhears the couple arguing. Spotting a calm and happy Lulu, he watches as a woman named Tammy handles the dog without any issues. When Jackson reveals himself, Gus apologizes and admits he had one too many edibles. Suspecting an injury, Tammy sends the men off with more edibles so that she can tend to Lulu in peace. Now dressed in a kimono, Jackson shows Gus how to escape from capture and shows him Lulu's hero book, a documented journal of her time spent in the Middle East. Discovering written poems and letters, Jackson reveals that the military requires soldiers to undergo therapy after a sustained brain injury. They're interrupted by a jubilant Lulu and are joined by Tammy, who reveals that Lulu gave her a transmission. An amused Jackson sits in as Tammy informs him that he and Lulu share a karmic connection and mentions his 3-year-old daughter Sam. Unsettled, Jackson takes his leave but not before Tammy tells him Lulu is craving a warm bed. With Lulu less guarded, Jackson begins to enjoy her playful nature as they make their way across the state. Taking a break from the wheel, Jackson makes a call and hangs up when he gets his ex-wife's voicemail. Weary from the long trek, they reach San Francisco and Jackson concocts a plan to land Lulu a warm and fuzzy bed before her final send-off. Posing as a blind veteran, Jackson is offered a free stay in the hotel's presidential suite. Refusing to bathe, the pair end up in the tub together, and Jackson works on getting her cleaned up. After room service arrives with their complimentary ribeye steak dinner, Lulu is content on the sofa as she watches videos of herself in combat. When Jackson prepares for a night out, Lulu follows him with her combat vest. Reminding her of Portland, Jackson tries to leave but comes back for her after hearing her cries. Muzzled, the pair make it to the lobby where he purposely bumps into the beautiful receptionist. While Jackson flirts, Lulu spots a Middle Eastern man, and triggered, she mauls him down. Making a bid to stop her, it's revealed that Jackson is not blind after all, which lands him in jail for impersonating a blind military vet. Apologizing for his bad judgment, he appeals to the guard, who turns out to be former military police. Resenting the rangers who would flip them off at the gate, he refuses to help the cocky vet and leaves him to stew. Standing in the lineup the next day, Jackson reveals his real mission to get Lulu to Riley's funeral. His story convinces the prosecutor to let him go, but only after he strongly advises Jackson to seek therapy. Reunited, Jackson is told that Lulu is suffering from anxiety and to get her the help she needs. Bonding over the drive along the sunny coast, Jackson learns that Lulu has a twin brother named Nuke. Agreeing to take her for a visit if she continues to keep her crazy at bay, Jackson drops in on his daughter for a surprise visit. Waiting outside, Lulu watches as a dejected Jackson returns to the car. He gives her the gift that was meant for Sam and makes his way to her family after striking out with his own. Arriving at a house, a vet named Noah appears and recognizes Lulu immediately. Learning that Jackson has never received the legendary Lulu hug, Noah gets him to suit up in an attempt to bond with her, who doesn't know the difference between fun and work. Afterward, Jackson learns that her brother suffered from the same trauma, but after 6 months of hard work, Nuke can be left with the kids to babysit. Commenting that Lulu remained in battle too long, Noah tells Jackson that they're guilty of not knowing when to hang up their boots and check out. Taking their leave, Jackson discovers all of their belongings stolen, including his pills and Riley's uniform. The men head out with Lulu and Nuke to hunt down the perpetrator and wind up in a homeless encampment. Learning that the thief is a fellow vet turned drug addict, Jackson wrestles the uniform off of him but is unable to recover his medication. After Jackson mentions his missing meds and his desire to return to battle, Noah points out that they could have easily wound up just like the addict at the encampment. Parting ways, Jackson watches as Noah returns to his awaiting family. Getting closer to their destination, and sounding like a confession to himself, he tells Lulu that nobody knows the true horrors that they had to witness in order to be a hero. With Lulu silently listening on, the engine suddenly sputters. Unable to get it started, the pair run to a nearby barn and the relentless thunder rattles Lulu. Back to her aggressive self, the two take out their frustration on each other. Taking a moment to calm down, Jackson approaches Lulu and turns the TV on for her. Settling down next to her, he laughs that they just needed to argue out their differences. He spends the night reading her the poems and letters Riley wrote to her while in therapy. The next morning is the day of the funeral and they head out on foot, managing to hitch a ride to the closest town. Too exhausted to walk, Jackson carries her the rest of the way and arrives just in time. Dressed in her combat gear, Lulu begins to cry and whimper. Releasing her, she heads straight to Riley's photo and loyally rests her head on his boots. Making their final salute, Jackson comforts Lulu as the sound of gunfire rings through the desert. Afterward, when he learns that he's been cleared for duty, Jackson tells the captain that Lulu's changed, hoping to spare her life. Instructed to see the mission through, Jackson is unable to convince Lulu to run away, and end up in a motel room for their final night together. Waking up, Jackson is overwhelmed by an oncoming migraine which he has to suffer through without any medication. When the worst is over, he crawls to a concerned Lulu, telling her he's okay. Hesitating, she lets him pet her ears and spends the night next to him on the floor. Arriving at their final destination, Jackson reluctantly puts on Lulu's muzzle as she whimpers in protest. Sensing her anxiety, he stops the guard and gently places the leash on her before whispering goodbye. Getting back in the car, Jackson drives away slowly and sees a frantic and distraught Lulu in his rearview mirror. Overcome with emotion, he reverses back and tells the guard he forgot to put on her uniform. Before he can drive away, he's told that he forgot his ID. Looking back at her, Jackson tells the guard to keep it, and thanks him for his service before driving away with his loyal friend. Over a montage of their new life together, Jackson reads a letter he's written to Lulu, telling her that he received his adoption papers that day and that Riley would be proud of them both. He ends the letter with a message thanking her for saving his life. Let us know what you thought about this movie in the comments below, and remember to click like and subscribe to keep them coming. If you want more movie recaps, watch our next tear-jerker about a man who's too ashamed of himself to go after the one he loves, until it's too late.